22nd May 2022. Today, we're going live on the Josh Tan Show. We're going to talk everything about property in today's discussion, but let me ask you a first question. I'm sure you have seen the latest news, right? That a spanking new Henderson 5-room flat has fetched $1.4 million. Now, even my father-in-law mentioned about it during breakfast. He was like, "Liang ah, 你要不要 upgrade 你的屋子? Which means you want to upgrade your home at this point of time." No, he's mentioned some things like, my house is too small. I don't know why it's too small. It's okay, in my opinion. I actually own a HDB and a condo. Later, I'll share with you my journey. That's what the whole podcast is for today. But my answer to him was actually very surprising. I told him that I may be exiting the market. That's true. I'm keen. I'm exploring selling away my HDB and not buying anything because prices are just so hot these days. So especially if you're a young couple, I guess I can lend you a voice and experience a point of view that is not salesy, that is not from a marketing pitch that you generally hear from anyone that is looking to sell you properties and stuff. So my journey can really be extrapolated with a big graph, which I'll show you. Hopefully you have some learning points, and as always, along the way, if you have benefited, smash on the like button so that we can reach a bigger audience together. Today I'll be covering with you a few questions. The first is I'll show you where are the biggest gains. In HDB and EC, there are big gains. I'll show you where the biggest gains are. I'm not a property analyst, but I think some of the numbers are just quite obvious. So I'll run through with you. Then I'll also be choosing the right HDB ownership structure. In any case, double convert with HDB. Whenever I mention something, double convert with HDB, go down, take their seminar. I think it's just a small token entrance fee, but you can learn a lot of things when you go to a seminar. Then, as always, find someone you can trust to be your appointed agent. So there are a few things that can help you in your journey. But if you take pictures wrongly when you go to showrooms and stuff, you can get swayed. So hopefully today you have some learning points. The second key part, I'll be reminding you and guiding you also how to define your own long-term goals. Because property, if you think about it, is very likely the biggest purchase that you make in your life. We don't buy like $1 million worth of shares that easily, correct? But in terms of property, in my circle of friends, people buying $3 million plus of property as of right now. So really the numbers are big when it comes to property. If you nail it correctly, definitely you can smoothen your journey to building wealth. And in case, I'll be launching my book, How to $1 Million, very soon in June. I'll touch a bit more in written format regarding home purchase and why you need to nail it down. Because you don't get to 1 million, you better nail down this first home purchase. Then you smoothen your journey. You reduce the obstacles. Also be sharing with you understanding the increased expenses in your next stage in life. Because when you buy home, it's to settle down, correct? If you're a couple, then there'll be kids, there'll be renovation, etc., etc. I'll touch on it, hopefully lending you an experienced voice, just in case you don't have a brother or sister that's older, not uncle auntie. Okay, then I'll also be touching on home loans versus bank loans. Sorry, HDB loans versus bank loans. I'll also be covering renovation loans, especially why you need to avoid them to build your wealth quickly. First question coming in from Chiking. Chiking is a friend of mine. I want to buy my house at 25 but don't have the money. Very simple to answer. HDB rules, you can buy as a single, age of 35. If Chiking, you're going to get married, then yes, you can buy at 25 or so. If not, the only option is in private properties. Then that part is a game of getting your capital correct. Out of this scope of discussion, but when it comes to HDB buying, right, as a couple, I think age is not a concern. It's mainly how to plan the steps ahead. Now, let me show you a very important chart that will really explain my whole journey. And it starts with this. I pulled out this HDB resale price because in 2011, I got married. That was 11 years ago already, so I'm not that young. I got married relatively early, like 27 years old at that point of time. The green arrow over there, which I like to draw a focus to, is where I bought my HDB flat. The price, $373,000. Let me remove this so that we don't get too caught up by the chart, the beautiful chart that's going up, and assume that when you buy property, it's a sure win kind of thing. 2011, I bought a 3-room flat, even though I could clearly afford something bigger. The reason is because it's ran up quite a bit over the last few years, correct? You see that since 2008, prices skyrocketed quite a lot. At the point of time, my point of view was, or rather, cooling measures were introduced around that period also. So my train of thought is, first house. So I told my wife, dear, we just buy the smallest available. we settled for a 3-room HDB flat. And choosing something small means that we can fully pay it off very easily. You get it? Which means if you buy a house is a liability. The moment you stay in it, you cannot consume rental from it, then that adds on to your expenses. But if you buy something small, you fully pay it off, and then you can rent it, it becomes an asset. So we're very clear, this is Finance 101. A home is a liability. Until it brings you rental income, then it's an asset, an investment asset. So my plan then was, I didn't know whether the index will go up furthermore or not, but indeed, it did run up all the way to 2013. I was still a bit early in calling it the peak. But indeed, it tanked subsequently, correct, with a lot of rounds of cooling measures. So my game plan at that point of time when I bought HDB Resale was to buy something small. A 3-room HDB at that point of time was already paying COV, very similar to what we are seeing in the situation for resale market right now. So when you buy a house, you also need to understand that the best is if you go buy a BTO, but that takes a long time to complete. But if you buy a resale, you can get it transacted 3 to 6 months kind of thing. And if you are intending to start a family quickly, there are also grants in the resale market that definitely help. But again, my approach to it was just buy something small so that I do have capital if I want to upgrade in future or buy a second property. So if you think about it, later we'll cover long-term plans. If that is part of your long-term plan, then adopt possibly this idea. Buying something small as a first house, then you give yourself a lot of room to invest and grow monies for a second property in future. If the first house is $1 million, you're going to struggle to pay it off very quickly. You need to sell and buy. And that's where most marketing pitches will be telling, oh, you buy the biggest house that you can afford. Then you upgrade. There's a lot of capital gains. But later I'll touch on where are the biggest gains in the market. Correct? This is the first question I'll address. But I want to pull back my story again, which is this. You realize that, hey, in 2017, I bought my condo in November 2017. That was a period whereby there was a lot of en bloc movement already. In 2016, there was the first big en bloc, if I'm not wrong. I started to see movement in the market. I convinced my wife again that it's time. We have prepared a capital for years already. What we did is we fully pay off the HDB. We had remaining capital to actually buy the condo itself. So that's where I actually made movement. And you will see that from 2013 in the red box over there to 2017, prices were flat to declining, correct? And the first message that I share with you is property goes in cycles. Don't mistake it with that you'll go up perpetually. Yes, on a very long-term chart it does, but there are always 4 or 5 year period cycles. The previous red box, which is the big one, as you can see over here, this was after the Asian financial crisis. Properties were low for more than 10 years. As of now, we don't know where the market is heading towards. Right now, there's inflation, correct? Right now, there's concerns that interest rates will skyrocket. Will we go to the first red box? I think that's pretty remote. That's pretty pessimistic. But to say that markets don't trend sideways or tank slightly, I think that's also being overly optimistic. And therefore, I'm trying to lend an experienced voice. If we indeed will see a market peak subsequently, should you also commit to big house and then tie yourself in? Think very carefully about it. Because what I did is I executed a buy for the condo in November 2017. And that's where I started to have 2 properties, whereby the home moved to this condo right now, which I'm filming. And then my HDB was rented out. I can share with you, so it's generating $2,000 per month in terms of rental income, something I shared on the main channel. Now, as you can realize, now the property trend seems to be going up, correct? But let's not get too caught up in that, because I have a few important messages to share with you in today's discussion. Let's go with it. The first is, let's address where are the biggest gains when it comes to buying a home. Now, if you have already bought a home, if you're experienced, do share in the comment sections. I'll be keen to pull it up for discussion also. But if you are newlywed or you are 20 plus years old, thinking of house, clueless on where to start, then these are important points. Take a pen, jot them down. The biggest gains in property, very simple, BTO and EC. To me, that is 保价, which means guaranteed win. In my circle of friends, I've seen BTOs make at least 100,000, even though the cycle was wrong. My resale flat barely made any profits. Again, why did I buy resale? At the point of time, 2011, combined income was above already. So maybe thinking, hey, Josh, you say biggest gains are in BTO. You looked at the data. Why didn't you buy a BTO? Quite simply, income part couldn't qualify already, so not eligible. So again, where are the biggest gains? If you can qualify for BTO, go for it. If you can qualify for EC, go for it. Both of them are almost 保价. EC, my friends now selling are probably 200,000-300,000 in the green. So these are avenues whereby you hear the stories and you think, hey, property is a sure win. But again, when you look at resale, my own experience is there's no gain yet, even though I've held it for 10 plus years. But if you look at the EC and the BTO, that's where there's a gain. The only con of it is quite simply you need to wait, which means if you want to start a family early, you need living space early. That is a bit problematic. But resale part, you can get some grants. So again, biggest gains are there. Then when you look in terms of data, the ones that really make money, if I can pull this up, well, even before 1996, that was our parents' flats, correct? Those that are more than 30 years old. Hey, why did they make double or triple or even 10 times? My mom bought her place at 40 plus thousand. Now it's more than 500,000, that 5-room flat. So again, different generations of flats perform differently. What I'm suggesting to you now is you need to think very carefully in terms of property cycle. If you're on the resale market, you can't qualify for BTO or EC or you can't wait for it. Then you must also understand that at many parts of the property cycle, even the property gains are not at 2.5%, which is your CPF OA interest rate. Think very carefully about it. If you want to build wealth, CPF OA gives you 2.5%, which means your property needs to grow at that pace. If not, you're better off leaving your money in CPF. So these are things you need to think about, which means also if property cycles are high, that's where you might want to consider what I did, which is to hold back on capital, go with something small. You can always upgrade with MOP cleared of 5 years. So these are little things that I guess market advertisements won't suggest. If you check out right now, advertisements wise, they'll say where you can make 6-figure gains, where you can make 7-figure gains in property. Quite simply, go with the BTO, go with the EC. If not, in the resale market, I don't think it's a clear-cut situation. Property advertisements are not telling you where people have lost money even. Now let's pull up a second question. As always, if you have questions, do leave in the comment sections. This is by Wilson. If single, you realize that only at 35, then you can buy HDB. And okay, if single, I have friends who are also single at age 38. I've always advocated them to buy HDB there. That's what I'll suggest to you, Wilson, also. Quite simply because when you buy HDB, it's the quantum-wise is definitely affordable. If you have been working all this while until 35, you definitely have CPF. I don't foresee that's a problem, which means deposit, no problem. Which means also if you have work, you're probably in management level, something like that. Which means affording it, no problem. It's only complicated when we need to discuss case to case where you buy private and it's more than $1 million. If you buy a HDB 800,000 and less, I think at 35 years old and above, no issues. Which means also if you can, you move the whole family, your mom over and stuff, and you can rent out your parents' flat, or you can actually stay in one of the rooms and you can rent out the rest. You don't need to clear MOP with that. What I'm suggesting to you is you can use your HDB for cash flow already. If you're willing to move there, you can get 2 of your rooms rented out. You generate cash flow already, which means you can even stay in the house free. There are little things to think about. If you're single at 35 and above, HDB resale is already available. Look to explore that. Look to take the hard steps of researching the data and making long-term plans for yourself. Because again, your mortgage can be paid by CPF OA, and then you can generate room rental. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. I'd much rather do something about it than remain status quo. The only thing is, do you believe the property cycle is on a peak now? Then you maybe don't buy something too big. If you think property cycle can still grow up a lot more, then buy the biggest you can. So again, depends on your interpretation. So we have answered that question well, and showed you also that when it comes to biggest gains, they are coming from the BTO, they're coming from the EC side. Then the next part is choosing the right HDB ownership structure. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this before or not. In owning a HDB flat, there are 2, which means you either do as a joint tenancy or you do as a tenancy in common. Go and read up on it. Be very familiar with housing rules because you want to buy a flat, right? And very likely this is the biggest purchase that you're going to make. So once you understand rules, you understand there's legal implications. But I also want to highlight the portion whereby you don't do as joint tenancy because that ties in your leg if you want to do a second condo purchase. I pay ABSD because one name is inside the name is inside the house. Right? This is considered second property really. I paid 7% at that point of time. Right now it's 17%. It's crazy. Which means if you structure it correct, there's actually 2 methods. One is do joint tenancy. The other is you do owner and essential owner structure. Essential owner is like an occupier. One main owner and the other is an essential owner, occupier. In this structure, the essential owner does not need to pay ABSD because the legal ownership is not in the HDB itself. You follow? Which means this person, for example, the wife, can buy the condo in future, need to fulfill MOPs too. Go and double check on rules, be familiar with it. But you understand that your spouse, if his wife, can buy the condo subsequently with no ABSD. You straight lock it with the right structure. Then also, you realize that once you choose your ownership structure with HDB, you cannot change it already. Unlike in private property setting, you can always pay legal fees, restructure the thing, etc., sell to spouse at 1%. There are a lot of ways that you can research, you can find out. But HDB structures are rigid, which means if you have plans to do long-term second property, you need to understand, you need to free up the name. Now, there are also cons with this structure, which is owner and essential owner. Only the owner's CPF can be used for mortgage because owner. Then you must decide, you must count your numbers, whether you can afford it. HDB loan, you need to pay 15% down payment right now, the newest rule, 85% LTV. If you buy with a bank loan, then that's different also. Then you need 25% down payment. And then the mortgage part also, make sure one person's name is okay. So that is a very crucial part. If you choose a structure wrongly, then you get stuck with ABSD. If you choose a structure wrongly, you can't sustain the mortgage, then also that's a problem. So do your sums very carefully, and there's always a lot of homework. And once you get it nailed, then you can progress in your asset. That also ties in with the second question, how to define your long-term goals, understanding your increased expenses. Now, if your long-term goals in home ownership is to upgrade, you buy the resale HDB. Again, you buy BTO, then great. You definitely have a gain already. Then how you make your next moves. Once there's a gain, you definitely have capital to buy 2 properties. That's how I see things. But if you buy resale, then the road is a bit more tricky. You need to define your long-term goals, which means if, just now we said, income-wise, you project it to grow quite well. Both will be earning income. Then maybe joint owner, and then you need to sell HDB to buy 2. But again, both need to be earning. I've even done a full tutorial on sell and buy 2 condo in my main channel. Later, I'll leave towards the end of this tutorial to really highlight the cons, what kind of income level you need. Because if you don't command the right income level, the mortgage part is going to be very stressful. It feels nice that you can own 2 property, but asset is not the way to build. Asset and loans are not the way to build wealth. You need to make sure it's affordable. You need to make sure that you can sustain, recession. We don't know if 2022 is a recession or not. And then still afford the mortgage payment comfortably. Because this ties in, understanding increase in expenses for the next stage in life. As a couple, when you buy your first home, the plan is to have a nest, correct? And then if you intend to have a nest, you should also understand that along the way, there's going to be kids coming on. And kids, infant care cost is more than $1,000. Next time, go to private kindergarten, go to private childcare center, it's more than $1,000 also, even with childcare relief. Which means if you start to have dependents, your expenses will definitely inflate. What I'm suggesting you is think very carefully how much you can use for your mortgage. If the amount of mortgage you can pay with 2 people's CPF OA, and then very comfortably, it does not touch your cash. You can have dependents, you can avoid taking on certain loans, and etc. It makes your whole wealth building process a lot easier. So take note also, there's always next stage in life whereby you have increased expenses, whereby a property agent is not going to tell you, oh, you don't max out your loan. They're not going to factor in for you that you're going to have kids coming on. There's going to tax on your cash flow. And any property rental, there's always periods whereby you don't have tenants. So that's something to take note of. Now, we have next question coming in from YJ. Now, I still have a second chance to buy BTO and target a new BTO at Keppel Club, which will announce in 3 years. That one is going to be extremely hot, YJ. So BTO is always a lucky draw. Once you get it, it's a windfall. As well, you see from this Henderson situation, I think they have netted 600,000. But again, it ties into the first question. What kind of properties will confirm make BTO EC? The rest, resale, you need to understand market direction, whether it means 2.5% or not also. So yes, YJ, if you can get a Keppel Club, what liao? That's going to be a million times oversubscribed. Now, since you stay with me to here, let me touch on bank loans versus HDB loans. For a long while, interest rates were very low. We were all slamming HDB loans. But as you see, increasingly, bank loan rates are climbing rapidly. My own mortgage, let me pull up. I used to have a paper. I loan it with RHB. So over here, you realize that month to month it's been increasing. Now I'm paying 1.4+% per annum already. If you go and fix it, I guess right now it's 1.8 to 2%. which means we're already closing in on HDB 2.6% loan. And the problem is, even if you do fix within the max is 5 years. After 5 years, it will float. Correct? So I'm reconsidering the simple recommendation. HDB or bank loan. Maybe HDB loan increasingly is not so detestable. Maybe that's the right term or not. That means you don't treat it too lightly. HDB loan, you don't need to put so much down payment. That's one thing, which means you can keep more CPF to get interest. 2.5% interest on CPF, but HDB loan is 2.6%, 0.1 above. But again, if interest rates from bank loans are climbing that quickly and we are not sure whether 3 years, 5 years later, it'll be less than 2.6 or not, then quite possibly HDB loans start to have that appeal again. Do consider what you want. If you want safety, but the best part about it is, regardless of whichever loan, the best defense for you is to not overstretch your budgets, which means interest rate go up, repay aggressively and own the flat, buy back the mortgage deed. Then you have no stress of interest rate. What if interest rate go to 3.5%? We never know. So the best defense is not overstretch your budget, because once you commit, it's committed for long term. Like my case, my home was $373,000. 2% income, easy. No stress at all. With kids coming about, maybe that is a experienced voice that gives you a different point of view. Don't overstretch budgets. You realize your journey is a lot easier. Any surplus you can keep in CPF, you do not invest. Or better, you know to invest in financial markets. They also touch on renovation loans. Now, renovation loans are a real anchor to anyone building wealth. I've seen before that, friends who have taken on renovation loans cost them $400 or $500 per month, whereby if they had saved up earlier, or if they had done less renovation, then actually this $400 or $500 can be compounded for 2-3 years easily and adds on to the capital to build wealth. Now stock markets are looking to trend downwards. This is actually opportunity whereby you can build wealth there. So if you have renovation loans, you overexpand yourself. If there's a recession in 2022, we never know. Then these are anchors, which means also if you are buying a house, make sure between you and spouse, save up a 50,000 bucket for renovation. That is about the very least that I see nowadays. Back to my journey. Put it up again. July 2011. Now, the good part is I've walked this journey before. And in 2011, I also told my wife, we do the most basic renovation. We are not going to stay here for very long. So what we did was just 11,000 plus in terms of renovation. That little. So really, it's a case of what you want. That bulk of it was spent on kitchen cupboards and toilet only. The rest, we kept it really intact because we didn't intend to stay there forever. That was part of the stepping stone. So if you are looking to stay long term, then do a big renovation. If you're also planning to move after 5 years, then there's no point spending 100,000 in renovations. I've seen before, even on YouTube, people doing those investments. So think very carefully. Renovation, if you can avoid renovation loan, that's a massive plus to your journey. And as always, be very prudent when you approach your home purchase. So if you are watching this on a recorded stream, do leave your questions continue at the bottom. And as always, and I have a quick shout out also. There's a new Weeboo brokerage account that's coming to Singapore. There's $100 free when you sign up and you deposit 2,000 if you are into stock trading and stuff. Check it out. I'll leave links below because it's a new launch and I thought it's a good time to introduce to you guys. But again, be very sure that it fits your investment. And if you're familiar with Moomoo and Tiger, then this is yet another platform they can tap on and explore what they can offer for you. So as always, if you benefit from this whole discussion, smash the like button, share with your spouse or your fiance, and share with a friend who should also listen to that. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you for watching to here. I'll see you next one. Goodbye.